They say necessity is the mother of invention. This is the situation currently as Nigerian citizens look for cheaper and alternative energy sources to fuel their cars and power their homes in the face of fuel subsidy removal and its attendant hike in prices. Now, many have now turned their eyes on compressed natural gas or CNG as a reliable alternative to meet their energy needs. But what's the conversion rate of gas-powered cars in Nigeria or the use of CNG for electricity in homes and small businesses? How affordable is the technology? Well, my colleague, Georgina Ndukwe Ezayinka, spoke with CNG users and experts.
So if you are looking for a more efficient and more affordable alternative to fuel for your car, then check this out. The cost of consumption for compressed natural gas is 1 cubic meter per 10 kilometers, 230 naira. Now, with the pump price of fuel now over 600 naira per liter, converting your vehicles to using compressed natural gas is more pocket-friendly alternative. Aside this, CNG is environment-friendly as it plays an important role in reducing vehicular greenhouse gas emissions as well as environmental pollution. The need for compressed natural gas or CNG-powered cars has started gaining momentum in Nigeria, majorly due to its efficiency and affordability. The recent increase in the pump price of fuel from 537 to 617 naira per litre has given rise to the need for an alternative to petrol, with an increased awareness about using compressed natural gas to power vehicles.
It's a natural evolution. We must look at all of these sources. If we take in the UK or in other parts of Europe, a lot of their public transport run on CNG. It's cleaner, it's cheaper, and it's certainly more environmentally friendly.
I caught up with Yusuf Uke, a transporter who has already remodeled his car to use CNG to find out the difference between both fuel products.
It's a simple alternative means of fueling our car instead of using the PMS, the petrol that we know, or the diesel. So that is just what compressed natural gas is all about. And it's also generated from our crude in abundance. And again, we have it domestically produced in Nigeria in very massive quantity, so which can even go around for the whole nation, and we have more.
Experts say CNG differs from liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, in its constituents.
CNG is pure methane, and that is the only natural gas that we have. Cooking gas is not natural, it's a mixture of propane and butane. So the only natural gas that is available is the methane, and it's 100% methane, unadulterated. So because of that, it's very safe because one, it is lighter than air. So even in a situation where there is leakage, it doesn't stay within the compartment of the vehicle. It escapes above the air. So that is one safety, unlike petrol. If petrol is leaking out, you dare not to drive the car, right? But in the case of CNG, even if it is leaking, you can still drive the car because as it is escaping from the storage, it's going above the air.
All right, CNG experts explaining those issues there. And of course, during the National Economic Council meeting, one of the recommendations was for the implementation of the Energy Transition Plan by the federal and state governments, and then, of course, the transitioning to compressed natural gas for mass transit vehicles to reduce reliance on petrol. And the government says it is aiming to set up manufacturing and assembly plants for electric vehicles in each zone in the country in the long term. But in the meantime, they encourage the conversion to CNG to create employment and reduce petrol dependency. Well, joining us now in the studio is an oil and gas expert, Brian Amonu. His company, Gas Analytics and Solutions, is currently partnering with petroleum marketers, IPMAN, and the federal government for a mass rollout of compressed natural gas stations across the country to support CNG-powered cars at subsidized rates. Thank you so much, Brian, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Sambu.
Yeah, and so the issues of electric vehicles have come into it alongside with CNG. The government is saying that before we come to electric vehicles, which we want to set up in different geopolitical zones, let's talk about CNG. Talk to us about that. What's the relationship between both?
Sure, that's a very wise decision by the government. Let me give you some quick numbers on this issue of electric vehicles. So to charge 10,000 electric vehicles that have an average of 60 kilowatt per hour fully, 10,000 vehicles, you need about 540 megawatts of electricity, right? no disco, no electricity distribution company in Nigeria today is delivering, has the ability to accept 540 or is delivering 540 megawatts. This is just
sure?
for...
Because I know Egme power plant is about 1,000 plus.
No, not generation, I mean distribution company.
Okay,
right?
Okay,
so the entire ECO customers of Abuja Disco are not receiving up to 540 megawatts. And that is what you need to charge 10,000 electric vehicles to 60 kilowatt hour, fully charge it. The gas required to fuel a gas plant to deliver 540 megawatts to charge just 10,000 electric vehicles is sufficient to provide 30 liters of gas equivalent to over 180,000 Uber vehicles, right? So the same gas that you need to charge 10,000 vehicles, you can use that amount of gas to provide 30 liters to over 180,000 Uber vehicles, right? And the average cost of, if you go to ChatGPT, I like to use them a lot, just type what is the average cost of electric vehicles in China. I'm not asking for US or Europe.
Yeah.
The price that came up just before this interview is $38,000 to $46,000 US dollars. So let's use that $8,000. So 10,000 electric vehicles, if we want to import it today, not taking into account transportation costs and profit or whatever, is sufficient to convert 1 million Uber vehicles at 285,000. So electric is not there. It's not the answer for us. CNG is a more sustainable domestic solution to electric vehicles.
And the next question would be, why are car manufacturers not already producing cars that already have CNG? But we see that there's a focus on electric vehicle manufacturing. So that, I mean, if Nigerians are saying that they are converting their cars into CNG rather than electric vehicles, the tendency would have been that, you know, they are not left behind. But the governors are saying that, look, before we migrate to electric vehicles, let's try CNG first. How fast can we roll out this CNG, and how affordable can it be?
Sure, with car manufacturers trying to assemble CNG vehicles, while that is commendable, but in the financial world, it doesn't really make sense, because where are the filling stations for the CNG vehicles to go buy gas? So if you recall, during my last interview with the APMAN president, we told you the main reason we partnered with APMAN is because APMAN is the only platform today that has retail outlets in every nook and cranny of the country, right? Remember, in adopting CNG as a solution to petrol, and because Nigerians demand access to affordable energy, right? When starting the rollout of CNG, you're not just going to look at those states where you have abundant gas. You have to come up with a plan to be able to deliver CNG in phase 1 to Sokoto, to Kebbi, to Delta, to Lagos, and only APMAN has that platform that can allow this to happen. In addition to that, the question of where do we convert our vehicles? So every APMAN station, by law, has an auto workshop, right? So those auto workshops can easily be retrofitted to serve as CNG conversion or post-conversion center. And regarding affordability, so we are working very strongly with the African Development Bank and 8 banks today, Taj, GTB, Access Bank, Fidelity, Keystone, right, to provide loans to vehicle owners. To pay, the loans will be, the term of the loan is going to be between 2 years to 5 years, right? So what that does is, by spreading the payment over a couple of years, you wouldn't really notice the cost of the conversion kit. It will make it much more affordable to Nigerians, particularly if you consider the NDIC report that says of the 110 million BVN holders, only 1.6 million have up to 500,000 naira in their account. And Nigerians who are already having problems have now been driven into a crisis mode by the removal of fuel subsidies. So we've gone from a problem to a full-fledged crisis. and with Nigerians having their purchasing power significantly reduced. So to justify investment, the hundreds of millions of dollars required to deliver CNG in every state, you need to create a large CNG vehicle pool. And the way we're accomplishing that is to provide loans to vehicle owners. And starting next week, the Nigerian Labour Congress will send out our pre-qualification loan programs to all workers in Nigeria, right? The response we get from that survey will now tell us that we need to set up 50 CNG stations in Sokoto, for example. We need to train 20 CNG stations to be able to convert this number of vehicles. So our business approach...
based on the demand and
yes,
supply.
Yes, it's one, driven by demand.
Okay, now let's talk about the letter you wrote to the federal government some time ago seeking some sort of funding, I think about $250 million, or you said that there was some sort of funding that was already available which the federal government could tap into and support this sort of initiative. Now, when we have the National Economic Council saying that, look, there needs to be a particular way to which the government can support the CNG conversion, how can this be done, and what's the state of the government's response to that letter you wrote?
Well, 3 months ago, the former Minister of Finance, Hajia Zainab, asked us to pitch our proposal to all the stakeholders in the oil and gas sector, including the former CBN governor and some members of his administration.
It's not former, he's just a suspended CBN governor.
Sorry, the suspended CBN governor, the GMD of NNPC, etc. And we mentioned that government already has 250 billion naira gas expansion fund. The main purpose, the primary objective of that fund is to create opportunity or to increase the opportunity for gas utilization in Nigeria. So therefore, we proposed that that fund be given to Nigerian vehicle owners, to mass transit operators, to state government as loans to convert their vehicles, right? So when you do that, IPMAN and ourselves, Gas Analytics, will be able to raise all the funding that is required to build out CNG infrastructure to deliver gas to those vehicles, right? Without giving out loans to create a market for natural gas, investment in delivering natural gas is not justified, right? And in terms of how quickly can this be rolled out, Sambu, your users can go online now. Every single technology required to deliver natural gas is being used in Nigeria today. So there's nothing to pilot. There's nothing new about natural gas, right? Even for some locations that are farther away from the pipeline, you need LNG. Greenville is delivering LNG today from from River State to Sokoto. They will start delivering from River State to Borno. So
I saw that contract was entered.
Yeah, there's nothing new about CNG
but that's
today.
Through trucking.
Through trucking, right? So there's nothing new about CNG technology today. All government needs to do is very, very simple. Central Bank has funding to support natural gas utilization in Nigeria. That funding should be made available to state governments to convert their vehicles to natural gas, to Nigerian vehicle owners to afford the cost of conversion. That will now...
They will take it in form of loans.
In form of loans.
And then pay
right?
gradually.
And pay
That's
gradually.
what you're proposing.
Right,
okay.
Right. So that will now catalyze investment required along each segment of the value chain. Without that, you can't have CNG adoption at the scale that is required to have an impact on subsidy removal. Okay,
Brian, there's a question that I asked a colleague of mine, which kept bothering me over the week. If we go to government offices or some other multinational offices and we are told that if we have a gas cylinder at the back of our car, we can't get into the premises of that organization.
Right.
What do we do when you have almost every car eventually converted with gas cylinders inside the vehicles? What are we going to be doing? So does that mean that we'll be able to move into some of these organizations or what?
Right, good question. There needs to be sensitization on the issue of CNG. So there are different types of gas here. So the gas they're probably referring to is LPG, which is the gas you cook with. Liquefied petroleum gas is primarily made up of butane and propane. right? So LPG is highly explosive. So if you take an LPG can, for example, and you shoot a gun at that can, it's going to explode. If you take a CNG, your typical CNG cylinder and shoot at it, most likely it will not penetrate. If it penetrates, it will escape because it's stored under high pressure. So the gas that you're referring to, which most government locations and big hotels don't like you to have them in your boat before you drive into their premises, is LPG. Natural gas is safer than LPG in an accident. It's safer than petrol. It's safer than diesel because it's lighter than air. So if there's a leak, it quickly dissipates. And then for natural gas to combust, you need to have an air to natural gas ratio of 5% to 15%, right? So because it's lighter than air, it's not going to hang around waiting to meet that ratio for it to ignite. Whereas LPG, or the common cooking gas, is heavier than air. So when it leaks, it pools on the ground waiting for an ignition source. So there has to be sensitization on the safety of
but
CNG.
how do we also ensure that terrorists do not take advantage of it? I mean, because when you see a cylinder, you don't know if it's LPG that has been converted inside or CNG, so that people, I mean, because these concerns will definitely be there, so that people don't take advantage of a clean energy that's supposed to help power the car and then put things, and then before you know
you can use RFID technology on the cylinders to confirm which one is LPG or CNG. And mind you,
there's a technology for that.
Yes, there is. So mind you also, in Pakistan, CNG has been so successful that government has reduced the supply of gas to CNG stations, right? So Pakistan is a much hotter region. Some places, of course, it snows in Pakistan. Egypt too has been pushing CNG so aggressively that almost all the mass transit vehicles in Egypt run on CNG. And with the Egyptian climate being hotter than what we have here, they don't have those cylinders exploding, right? So Sambo, natural gas is inherently safer than some of the fuel that you currently use.
And I want you to talk to our viewers about the issue of using CNG for electricity generation too, because I mean, you had told me something like that.
Yes.
A place that Nigerians could actually gain some electricity from.
So the project that we're currently embarked on now is called Sustainable Energy Access Project, and includes CNG for vehicles, access to power, electricity generation and distribution, as well as cooking gas. So with the removal of fuel subsidy, a lot of small, medium enterprises saw their operational prices go up by at least 300%. And if you know, I'm sure you know this, SMEs are the largest employers of labor in the country. Significant majority of them fuel their generators with petrol. So what happens when you remove fuel subsidy? The cost of those businesses go up by, right now it's about 300%, right? So to address this issue of fuel subsidy removal, we should also look at not just providing CNG as an alternative to transportation because it's cheaper, but energy access. So currently, today as I speak to you, Sambo, NNPC Gas and Power Investment Services is partnered with us to carry out pre-feasibility study of the entire value chain to deliver a minimum of 300 megawatts to each state, right? Targeting not just existing customers, but investment opportunities in agriculture, in solid mineral mining, in manufacturing, etc., right? As a way to cushion Nigerians from the impact, especially those affected by the high cost of having to run their generators on fuel that costs 617 compared to 190. So yes, that is currently ongoing now. And why that is critical, Sambo, is because I have 2 cell phones here, right? Not because I like to carry 2 cell phones. We all know that the network in Nigeria is horrible. The primary reason for that is we don't have enough base stations to provide optimal coverage to the over 200 million smartphones we have. And the reason we don't have enough base station is running any business on diesel doesn't work.
Yeah, man.
Right? So even in the case of an emergency, right? To call police, and network is not there, right? Between 2018 and now, when we started approaching police to convert their vehicles to CNG, government has launched maybe 15 to 20 crime reporting apps, right? Where you see a crime, you snap a picture. But the problem with that is network in Nigeria today is horrible, right? So the issue of electricity is paramount in moving us from a consuming nation to a producing nation, right?
But the telecom operators, I mean, they could actually approach you because, I mean, they are private companies. Shouldn't they be using the CNG to their own advantage? Do they need to wait for the government to do that?
We have the ability to deliver CNG cheaper than the LPG that's being used to fuel your generators. But what we're taking a more holistic approach. So by targeting territories in a state to deliver significant amount of power, I'm talking about 300 megawatts per state. So we want to address the issue of electricity access in a manner that is much more economic, right? That is much more beneficial to the environment. For example, if we have to contend with delivering CNG canisters to 50 million petrol generators, for example, what road are you going to be driving your trucks on, right? So it's better to build a massive central power plant and use transmission line instead of trucks. Transmission line will now be your truck to deliver power to those states to support economic development.
All right, Brian, as we try to round off this conversation, there's a colleague of mine who actually said he went to convert his vehicle to CNG, and he was told by one of the the person converting the vehicles, that his vehicle cannot be converted. Do you have such instances where certain vehicles cannot be converted because of maybe the technology, or it's too old, or something?
Yeah,
like that?
it has. I don't think it has to do with technology alone. The age of the vehicle is also important. If the engine is carburetor fed or injection fed is also important, but primarily it's because of the age, due to the age of the vehicle.
So are there vehicles from specific years and below
and make
that
models?
cannot?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so well, not all vehicles can be converted.
No,
As we try to round off this conversation, let's talk about how fast state governments could partner with the federal government to ensure that companies like yours and others, including I think Innocent and others who are coming into the CNG business, are quickly given the much needed support to deploy the infrastructure.
Right, so
because in the whole of Abuja, for example, is only one one gas plant that actually converts vehicles.
In the words of Winston Churchill, whom you know, he said, "Why let a good crisis go to waste?" Right? So we have a unique opportunity to make a radical change today for a better future, right? So again, with IPMAN and with support from AFDB, we've started conversation with a few states to offer them access to loans to convert their vehicles, right? Remember, as I mentioned earlier, to attract investment to deliver or build, let's say, 20 CNG stations, you need to create a pool of 20,000 to 30,000 CNG vehicles to justify that investment. So that is the approach we're taking. So we've started approaching state governments to say, look, we can provide funding, not just to your civil servants, but we can provide funding to convert your operational vehicles to CNG, to make it easy for you to access conversion technology. We can provide funding to your mass transit operators. Let's work together. Once we identify the number of your civil servants, the number of vehicles for your state agencies that are interested in taking our conversion loan, we can build out the required CNG filling station and infrastructure.
Yeah,
to
I mean, you said even the Lagos
delivery.
state government is already...
Yes. I met with them about three days ago.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we just hope that several state governments will, take advantage of this
Right.
and help to reduce the challenges that are facing their staff and of course other Nigerians. Well, we must thank you so much, Brian Amonu,
Thank you.
who is an oil and gas expert and the CEO of the Gas Analytics and Solutions, who has been helping us to understand the CNG issues. And of course, it's the topical issue everywhere. Everyone is trying to reduce the cost of fueling across the country. And I'm thinking of doing the same conversion myself, but we'll all watch and see how the governments and then other organizations take advantage of this before we eventually take advantage of it, and then we just hope that the security of it will continue to be handled in such a way where we do not have a different crisis while trying to resolve one problem. Well, that's how it's been on this edition of This Week. See you again next week. I'm Somna Sambo.